Verse 46. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of the Pharaoh and went through all the land of Egypt. So here we just get an idea how old he was, 30 years old. He was like, I think somewhere I said like about 13 years he was in prison, so around 17 when he, maybe a little bit younger than that, when he was sent into slavery. Right? So 30 years old now, working for Pharaoh. And he went out of the presence of Pharaoh, so in other words, meaning going out of the presence, sent by Pharaoh, and now he's going over through the whole land. Again, that just shows his authority that's been given to him by Pharaoh. Ultimately, it was given to him by God, right? Because God stands above. You can clearly see God's hand in all of this. So Pharaoh sure thought that he is the one giving the authority, but actually the authority came from God himself. Verse 47, during the 7 plentiful years, the earth produced abundantly. And he gathered up all the food of these 7 years, which occurred in the land of Egypt, and put the food in the cities. He put in every city the food from fields around it. So in the 7 years, when they were producing plentiful, they collected everything, or not everything, 20% as he stated. They gathered it up, and they put this food in the cities. Just like I said, it needs to be done, and he did it. He didn't send food from this city to be stored in that city, so they collected the food from the fields around the city and stored it in that city. Okay, it's just logistical, otherwise it would be a nightmare, but it makes sense as well. So they stored everything that's around that, very easy, people bring it in, the 20%, whatever. They didn't need to transport it all the way across the country or something like that, up the Nile River, because Egypt is most even still today just populated around the Nile River, and understandably there in the Nile Delta. Okay, so this is how they did it. The food from the fields around, storing in that city. Verse 49, and Joseph stored up grain in great abundance like the sand of the sea, until he ceased to measure it, for it could not be measured. So yes, in the beginning they would write down, okay, there's this amount of bushels of grain, this amount of this amount of that, whatever, write it down. But it became so abundant, they're like the grain of the, now here's not grain, it's just rocks, so you can kind of count it, but still there are lots of rocks around here, so I don't think it's possible to count. None of these rocks, they are sand, impossible to count. And then ultimately, they could not, it became so much, they had such an abundance of food that in the end they just sort of kind of gave up on counting it. Verse 15. Before the year of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph. Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, a priest of On, bore them to him. Okay, so before then, so after 7 years, before this, so in that 7 years period now, Joseph, his wife, Asenath, gave birth to 2 sons. Verse 51. Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for he said, God has made me forget all my hardship and all my father's house. Again, the naming of the sons, but at least here it's not done by Leah, for example, and all those names. You can kind of see, but you see, from the firstborn son, it's about God. Okay, God made me forget about my hardship. Not I, not because I achieved this goal, I worked hard and I was trustworthy, I said no to Potiphar's wife and all of that. Not because I'm not guilty in all of this and I'm so good and therefore I deserved it. God is the one who made it. God made me, helped me, or made me forget these hardship and my father's house. Which ultimately that's where it started. So you see as well the difference in naming. This the honor immediate. I remember with Leah, it's only the fourth, with Levi, fourth son Levi, where she said, now was to worship to God kind of idea, right? So this is not, here he immediately starts off giving honor to God with the firstborn. So it's, yeah, God helped me forget. But then at the same time, it's like as if he doesn't really want to forget, neither of his hardships nor his family, because if he wanted to, because with the name Manasseh will always remind him of that God did help him to forget about it. But then every time he calls his son, he will be reminded of the fact that God helped him to forget about it. So in other words, there were the hardships. So he was not running away from the hardships or the family. It's not like as if he wanted to like totally get rid of them or anything like that, because the hardships is what made him. Okay, but he is just saying that those hardships compared to, and the family and the remembrance of the family is, God made it possible for him to overcome all of this. That's the important thing here. That's just basically in the name of Manasseh. Verse 52. The name of the second he called Ephraim, for God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. Okay, so again, giving honor to God. Not I did this, not because I could explain these dreams, but because God made it. God made it possible for me. He gave me. So God, although, I mean, it's like, because, you know what, where was God when they threw me into the pit? Where was God when they sold me into slavery? Where was God when I did all of this? God is nowhere inside. Every time God just turned his back on me all the time. God never did anything to help me. I did it all. I am the good guy here. Okay, he could have said that. No, not Joseph. So here he clearly again says, God made me fruitful. God made me forget all this. God made me fruitful. So clearly in the names of these children, we again clearly see the character of Joseph. It's unlike Leah way before, right? And the others. We give these names. It's like a fight against each other to remind them actually more, to hurt each other more. No, for Joseph he's giving all the glory and honor to God. All the time. That is the beauty of Joseph, not taking any of it for himself, but giving it to God all the time, even in the names of his children. Verse 53. The 7 years of plenty that occurred in the land of Egypt came to an end. Okay? 7 years of plenty coming to an end. Verse 54. And the 7 years of famine began to come, as Joseph had said. There was famine in all lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. So 7 years of famine came. Famine everywhere, not just in Egypt, famine everywhere. But in Egypt, there was bread. Why? Because of Joseph. Why was Joseph there? Because God put them there. God put them there not to just ultimately is going to take care of his family, make it possible for them to find a safe haven, a land of asylum, not cowards, where they could find peace and grow into a nation, ultimately. Right? But at the same time, a blessing to other nations, because they were suffering from famine and they could come now to Egypt to buy. So Joseph is a blessing to others as well. So Joseph wasn't ultimately only put there only for his family, but he turned out to be a blessing to his family, sure, but to the people of Egypt and to people in surrounding countries. Verse 55. When all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, go to Joseph. What he says to do, to you, do. So as the time goes on, these 7 years lingered. And sure, there's nothing for the people in Egypt themselves, understandably, to produce, to eat. So they go to Pharaoh, say like, yeah, what do? We don't have bread anymore. Okay, so Pharaoh's words, don't come to me, go to Joseph. That's that. Go to Joseph. Do what he says. That's all. Right? This slave boy, this young, nearly the youngest of the family, and nobody was thrown out so many times. Who couldn't, in a sense, sunk any deeper. Yes, Christ sunk deeper than this. He became now the one to give them life. Like Christ gives life to us. Well, I'll get back to that in the conclusion part. Verse 56. So when the famine has spread over all the land, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe in the land of Egypt. So the famine spreading, people coming, he opened the storehouses, he started selling. He didn't give it away. Okay, because it's not in a sense the wisest thing to just give it away, because if you just give it away, then people might abuse it. They might not give. It's not mentioned that he asked exorbitant prices for this. Just a normal kind of a price, and the people had the years where they could make enough money. If, say, for example, in those years of overabundance, they just flooded the market with all their produce, then they would have not gotten that much money for their produce. They would have gotten a lot less. So, of money. I mean, so they were selling more, making less per, so they make kind of the same amount of money, not making any more. But now, years later, they will have money, but they won't have any food. So now, because they were selling, they made the same amount of money, but now they have as well a place to where they can go and buy the food. So I hope you as well understand that this is not just Joseph abusing them, as some say, this is bad. They're like, they need to sell absolutely everything ultimately to buy the food. And Joseph is like there's nowhere mentioned that he asked exorbitant prices for anything. They made their money in the good days, and because of him, they made more money. Otherwise, they would have flooded the market. Like I said, they would not have made this much money. So they're just giving back what he made impossible for them to make. Verse 57. Moreover, all the earth came to Egypt to Joseph to buy grain, because the famine was severe over all the earth. Right, so people came from other countries as well, because the famine was not just in Egypt itself, it was in surrounding areas. And this opens the chapter, the story of that's going to happen next, with his brothers saying need to come, right? But it's not only his brothers that's going to come, it's people from all over the world, in that area, understandably. They're going to come there, and they're going to be able to buy food because of Joseph, right? The famine was severe everywhere. So praise God for how he did the story, how he brought Joseph there for the sake of his people. Okay, like Christ dying for the sake of his people. But as I mentioned yesterday as well in other videos, and you'll still see them on YouTube, God willing, watching them, that ultimately we are a blessing to others. For our sake, because of us, and the world will ever deny that. They will say we are mad, whatever, but that's actually why. Right, so because to have his family survive, God brought him, and then he became a blessing, not only for the survival of his family, but as well the survival of millions of people in the surrounding countries as well. So, they are blessed to be a blessing, not a curse. Right, so I think this might be this for today, but the conclusion still left, where we will talk about a few of the main things that came out from this chapter. Thank you.